I'm actually going to start that recording now. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today's meant to be a really casual day so that you can have your questions answered. You can ask questions. We can get to the bottom of it. If we don't have an answer for you today, it's something that I will have my pen and paper and I can write it down and we're going to get you an answer. You know, hopefully by the end of the week, we can have you comfortable with moving into conference season. We know that January and February are crazy busy for all of us, especially when it gets down to BPA and SLC related things. So we just want to make sure that today kind of gives you those tools that you need for your toolbox to help you really succeed at conference this year. So I'm going to have a few brief updates and then we're just going to turn it over. If we run a little bit ahead of schedule, that's fine. If we have a lot of questions in one section, we're running a little bit behind, it's okay. We're going to make up our time. You're going to get your lunch break and then everyone's questions will be answered. I promise. So, okay, I have too many screens open, Sherry. I have to have a paper and pencil somewhere. So, okay, perfect. Everyone has the agenda. If you don't have the agenda with you or don't have the capability to print it out or have one in your email, it is on the BPA website. So you can just go under there. It's under information library, competition, boot camp. All the agenda information is there.
Hello, advisors.
And welcome to
Advisor Boot Camp.
So hopefully you were able to hear the video that the state officers made for you this last week while they were here. We've so far been able to hold all of our state executive council meetings in person. We're spread apart in our conference room and we wear masks the whole time. Everyone takes their temperature and everything like that. But we've been trying to give the state officers as many in-person opportunities as they can have this year. Okay, so a few reminders. I will be giving the SLC announcement, the official decision about SLC on November 19th. That's this Thursday at 3:45 p.m. It will be in Zoom. I've sent that link out and I'll send it again probably tomorrow on Wednesday. We're not talking about whether SLC is virtual or in person today. That's not what we're here for today. That's going to happen on the 19th. So just keep that in mind. I'll be able to answer everyone's questions and kind of get down to things on the 19th. I know everyone's anxious to hear that. And then we'll be posting that to social media and on YouTube as well. So if you miss the meeting, it will be recorded. You will get the information uploaded that you can watch later. The state officer apps are due on December 1st. So remember, that's a major change this year. Not COVID related. That's something I've been planning to do for a little while, is to take that application process out of the SLC chaos. So if you have someone who is wanting to run for state office, those applications are on the website and those are due on December 1st. Our screening will be on the 15th of December and we have moved it to virtual. Just basically due to space and social distancing concerns. We just didn't have enough space if we had a ton of applicants where we could really spread them and then their advisors out. And then the national virtual events, they have extended that deadline to December 1st. And because we are Central Time, remember that the end time for that upload will be at 10:59 p.m. and not 11:59 p.m. Okay. Make sure there's no questions in chat. Okay, some opportunities coming up. And if you've read my emails over the last couple of weeks, you already know about these things. Online practice tests. These are free for you. They're included. We're paying for them through your registration. So you don't have to pay anything for these. They're in the DLG site so that you can your students can practice just as they would be testing online for State Leadership Conference. We have 5 years of district and regional tests that are on the site. They can take one test, they can take 30 tests, and it charges us the same thing. So please take advantage of that. They can retake them as many times as they want. It tells them the correct answers. Use this as a tool. It's open midway through the online testing period so that even when your students are testing for SLC, they could take the practice test if they wanted to prior to taking the actual test. Our OK Be My YouTube channel has all of the FLC videos that we produced on it. So we have the keynote speaker, All of the officer workshops and the celebration are all on YouTube, as well as a lot of other content that the BMIC group has been producing. And then our OK BPA website constantly being updated. Check out that virtual tab. The WASP guide is on there. There's information and links to a lot of national information that's happening. And then as always, check out the membership gateway, which is something new this year that I know many of you are really taking advantage of and loving so far. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay, perfect. I will be monitoring chat. So if you do have any questions and someone's speaking, feel free to add them to the chat and I'll try to answer you there. But without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Ms. Meyer from Leedy High School take over.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see everybody and everyone that joined this morning. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Torch Awards. My kids have been very successful the last several years participating in the Torch application project. And I just want to talk a little bit about why we do Torch. I want to maybe ease your mind that it's not something huge and scary for your kids to do, that it's something really pretty simple for them to be able to compete in. The reason that my kids, we have chosen to do Torch is a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm very small school. I'm the BPA advisor at Leedy. And so I have about 20 kids in BPA. In our school system, we have about 200 kids pre-K through seniors. So for us, all of my kids are involved in every single activity at school. They play sports, they're in FFA, they're in FCCLA. So for us, for me to find an opportunity for my kids maybe to compete in other levels, it's really difficult for us. So for us, Torch is a great way for my kids to be competitive with all of the other activities that are going around. So the other reason that we do Torch is this gives us an opportunity for my kids to earn their way to nationals. If they qualify and they get the ambassador status, which is the national recognition of the Torch application process, then I take my kids to nationals. We may not get there whenever we compete, maybe in the competitive events, but we do get there for Torch Awards. And so that's really a recruiting tool for me to get my kids active. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen. I don't really have anything major to present, but I do want to show you a couple of things. So bear with me. We use Google Meet. So I'm not as familiar with my Google or with Zoom. So, whoa, that's not what I want to share. Let's see if I can find it. So there's 4 levels of your Torch. There's the executive award, which is they only have to get 10 points in each category. That's awarded at the local level. The Diplomat award is supposed to be, I think, more of maybe an area or regional award. The Statesman is what students can earn at the state level. And then for my kids, our target is the Ambassador Award, which is 70 points in each category. There are 7 categories that students have to earn points in, and the categories are leadership, cooperation, knowledge, patriotism, love, hope, faith, service, and friendship. So these particular categories, some of them are really easy for students to get points in, and other categories are a lot more difficult, and they really have to go above and beyond, and they have to really focus on, if they're interested in gaining that ambassador status, then they have to be focused and really gear their activities to meet these requirements. I'm trying to get back to maybe not share. I don't, how do I not share?
Leanne, if you hover over the top of your screen where it says you are sharing, there should be like a stop share. Do you see that?
Yes. Let's see. Pause share.
You can do that if you want to.
Did that work? I don't know. Sorry, guys. Okay, well, we'll just continue. We'll just continue. You may not get to see me. So here's some, there we go. Some of my advice, I guess, to new advisors are, first of all, have your kids get in and get the torch. I don't know if you can see it with my little screen, the torch handbook, because the torch handbook is really their guide to what gives them points, how many points they can get. And we just start out and we print that out at the very beginning of the year, and then my kids can go in and make notes on there. So just some advice as students start going through and doing their torch application. Everything that they do, they need to keep a little bit of a diary, because dates are very important and specifics are very important. So if they were able to join the BPA, the fall conference, then they need to make sure that they document the date in their notebook or on their handbook, and then what specific workshops they attended and the presenters, because those are specific things that they're going to ask for. I'm going to try to share again because I want to kind of take you through where you can go to do that. And let's try this. Let's see where I can't get to my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, maybe can you see my screen, Paxton?
Yes, we are on the BPA.
Okay, so for kids to get to this, they go to just the BPA website, students, and over here on the left side, one of the options is Torch Awards, and this is going to provide them all the information that they need. As they scroll down, there's a Torch Award login, and they're going to log into that just like they log in any other time. They'll use their membership ID and then the password that you as an advisor set up originally, and then once they get in, they'll be able to reset their password. As I scroll down, this is how to earn points, and I'm going to open one of these up so that you can really see how easy some of these are and then how difficult some of them are. So on leadership, the points, it lists the points. So for this one, the activity is serve as a BPA chapter committee chairman. That's worth 10 points. They can use that twice. So for example, our BPA, we're the ones that sponsor Pink Out, which is the cancer awareness night at our basketball games. And my chairman would be able to go in and be specific when they enter their information. On December 4th, I was the chairman for our Pink Out Cancer Awareness Night. I was responsible for blah, blah, blah. And then they would list all of that. If they're a member of or a chairman of another committee, they would be able to enter it a second time. So by just being a chairman, they have 20 points, and you've got to have 70 points in leadership. So they're already really in a good position to earn their points. For kids that are wanting to do the torch, a couple of things that are super important. They really have to be active. They have to be an active BPA member, but they also have to be active throughout their school, because they're going to earn points by being members in other organizations. As you can see down here a little bit lower One of them is serve as an officer in another school, faith-based, or similar organization while an active BPA member. So if they're also a member of FCCLA, they're going to earn points getting that also. If I have students that are wanting to do torch and they are, maybe they only do BPA things, they can probably get their points, but it's going to be way more difficult. So I really try to encourage them to get involved in other activities, other organizations at school, because those are going to help them build their resume. Each category has, there's probably 40 or 50, maybe even more different ways for them to earn points in each category. So it is really doable. I have had students that have earned points from 0 to ambassador level in 1 year. Those kids that are able to do that, they are the kids that are very, very active throughout the school. I tell my students, usually as freshmen, it's really hard because they don't have the opportunity. Excuse me, that's my bell. I'll have kids coming in here, so bear with me. But freshmen is difficult for my kids because they're not going to be officers in other organizations. It is a little bit more difficult for them to be involved, but it is absolutely doable. And for us, kids that are, I'm trying to get back to my screen. I don't know if I can find it. Kids that are active in sports, they get to earn points there as well. I'm still trying to get back to my screen. Paxton Advice, can you see me?
Are you trying to get back to just seeing your browser?
Yeah, well, no, I'm not sharing. Am I sharing now?
You are still sharing. Do you want to stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that somebody else is helping me out with that. So are there any questions? I know I kind of just hit on some of the highlights because I definitely want to tell you that it is absolutely doable. As an advisor, your role is to keep them honest, because they can put whatever they want to on their application. They can say, oh yeah, I served as an officer in FCCLA whenever they didn't. So it's my job to go back and make sure that all of those are accurate. For me, it's really easy because I'm in a small school system, and so I know what they're involved in. For some of those that are in bigger schools, my advice is there is an area on there where they have to upload documentation if they want to. It's not a requirement, but for you, you can certainly make that a requirement. You can tell them they have to upload a picture of them doing whatever it is that they said that they were doing, because just so that you're able to verify that. I have found that my kids are very honest in what they do. We also sometimes during our meetings or after a meeting, I will have just my torch winners. We will all come together and meet as a group, and we'll talk about some things that maybe somebody puts on their application. It might trigger something for another student. Oh, I did that. I just forgot about it. Because since they're not competing with each other, it's okay to share and help each other out and remind them of some different activities. The other advice that I have, when I put together my program of work at the very beginning of the year, I do my program of work to target some of these things that you're going to find in your handbook that I know if we do this, they're going to be able to get points for it. And most of them, a lot of them are just community service things that really we need to be doing anyway. And kids need to learn to give back to their community. And so those are maybe the community service projects that we do. We're getting ready to send Christmas cards to some of our
teachers, pardon the interruption.
Excuse me.
The junior high and high school 5 county academic meet for tomorrow has been moved to February 3rd. Thank you.
So sorry about that, but we're going to send Christmas cards to some of our local people that we know of that are in nursing homes. They're going to be able to get points for that. And that's something that really we should be doing anyway. I hope that I have maybe given you some advice and hopefully haven't made it quite so scary, but I would love to have some questions and hopefully I can answer any questions.
So Leanne, we do have a few questions in the chat. We have one about, do you do pictures or just the journal?
Do I do pictures or just the journal?
Mm-hmm.
Really, my kids, I have them just make their notes here. Now, we have done pictures before, and there are times that they'll upload something, especially if it's something that the kids think that maybe I don't know about. They might upload a picture during their application process so that it's just, there's no question. And so the first round of approving it comes from the local advisor. So I proofread everyone's because they can't have any spelling mistakes. They have to be complete sentences. So I proofread everyone's first before I submit it. Then it gets submitted to the state, and Jacqueline or someone else at the state, they go back and they review it. After they have approved it, then it goes on and I can submit it to nationals and someone at nationals approves it. So there's times that things get kicked back that are legit. One year I had a kid, they had used their application for 2 years. So one year they were maybe like a committee member of Pink Out. The next year they were a committee member of Pink Out. And the national people thought it was the same exact thing, and you can't do that. They didn't realize that it was 2 separate years. So we had submitted it early enough. My kids could go back and edit that and resubmit it again. So just advice, I always make my submission date considerably earlier than what the actual deadline is, so that if there are issues with it and it gets kicked back, they have time to edit that or maybe put in another activity that they've done to get those points.
Okay, perfect. We have one that I'm going to answer, and then we have a couple more, Leanne. So we have one that's asking about torch pins for Diplomat and how much they cost. I am on the BPA mall right now. I can't find them on there, but I will get with Heather from National BPA and find out how much they are. Keep in mind that with the executive and diplomat levels, you as local advisors award those. We don't have the pins for those at state. We don't award those. So that is up to you. So I think that's part of where this question is coming from, is there, you are responsible for awarding the executive and diplomat pins and certificates. If you want to do that, I will get that information for you, Mr. Gervaisi. I also don't know if they have the certificates. Like I said, I'm on the mall right now. I don't see them listed, but I'm going to do some more searching throughout the day and see if I can find them. Let's see. Then we have another question. Do you start this in the summer or do you start this in August? When do you start your torch wards?
So if a student is a new member, I try to encourage them to join at the end of the year, or even if they are an 8th grader, because you can't take 8th grade points because that's middle level and use them for your high school level. And so if I have an 8th grader that is a member and then they join in as a freshman, I allow them to use their summer points. However, if they're a first-time member and they join at the beginning of the year, then they can only use points from when they joined. They have to be a member of BPA to use any of their points. So the ideal thing is they join, as freshman year. It's difficult to be freshman, to get the points as a freshman anyway, and then they will be able to use all of their summer points and then join again as a sophomore. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Leanne. And then we have a suggestion. Anything that students do since they've been a BPA member can count towards their points. For example, if they did not submit something from a previous BPA membership year, they can submit it for the current year.
Absolutely. So, for example, my kids, we chose to go to nationals every other year just because of the expense of it. So we did not go to nationals. Even if we would have had nationals, we would not have gone last spring. So my kids have had 2 years to put their points in. And if a student didn't fill out the application as a sophomore, even though they were a BPA member, then they come in as a junior and they decide, you know, I think I want to try for the Torch Awards. They can use any activity that they did as a sophomore, and we put it in as the sophomore year. I don't count it as doing it junior year. They actually will go in and say, I served as a committee member during my sophomore year as blah, blah, blah. And then they are able to use both of those years as long as they're a BPA member.
Thank you. And I can't stress enough the value of submitting them early so that they can be corrected if needed. And even maybe going a little bit, if you can, having 1 or 2 things above the points that you need. That way, if it does get kicked back and you legitimately can't reason why it needs to be on there, you have some leeway and some stretch there. So we always allow you to correct them if there's time between those deadlines. So that's a really important thing.
I tell my kids to strive, even though 70 is the minimum they have to get. I really encourage my kids to have 80 points in each category for exactly those reasons, because there are times that I think that something would count, and then as it gets to the national level, it gets kicked back, and they'll send you a note and say, whatever item number, whatever is not a valid entry. And so, you know, they can delete that and they've still got their 70 points, and then we can just resubmit.
Yes. And Sherry Gleaves has shared that you can earn ambassador twice. You just have to start all over after you earn it the first time. So that's exciting.
And I have had kids that have been ambassador twice because, again, national conference was a big draw for them. And so they really, really worked hard. And there are some things that kids have to be very strategic about. There's some that you can make a display, a leadership display. And so they really have to work at that, or they have to present and memorize our BPA pledge and present that. And so there are definitely things that they have to be very aware of and do it on their own.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions about Torch Awards, or comments or advice that anyone that has done it would like to share?
Okay, well, I just wanted to say, just kind of as a last, I love, love, love the Torch Award program, because for me, I think one of the most important things that we can teach our kids is really how to be a good community member and really learn to volunteer. Because I think if we don't teach our kids to be volunteers and to give back to the community, it's just not something really parents do as much anymore. And I just think that's a huge responsibility on us. And kids that learn as young kids to give back to their community, they're going to be those adults that do the same thing. And I just think it's a huge training tool and learning tool for our kids. So I hope that you guys will participate. If you have any questions, I'll quickly share my email, maybe if I can share my screen, we'll see. I'll share my email with you, and you can maybe write that down. But my email, again, I'm Leanne Meyer, and my email is LAMEYER @Leedy, which is 3 E's, leedey.k12.ok.us. Please email me with any questions and I will be happy to help you as much as I can. I'm certainly not the expert, but we really have been successful with this program.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks,
Taking the time
Paxton.
to help us with that. You all always do so well at Torch, so you were one of the first people I thought of for this. If you do have questions, email Leanne. You can email me and I can forward it to Leanne if you didn't catch her email, and we can get those answered for you. For those of you waiting on the Diplomat Torch pin prices and things like that, I have emailed nationals, so hopefully I'll have an email or an answer by the end of the day for that question. Okay, so Jonathan, are you ready to start a little bit early?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Gervaisi from Yukon High School, and he's going to talk to us about why you should run students for state office.
So I'm actually going to start with, most of you were around when I was an officer, but those of you that either weren't or were just getting started in your BPA journey, I was a state officer in 2015 and then a national officer in 2016 and 2017. So there's really two main ways we can go. Why is it advantageous for your students to run? And then I also want to talk about why it's kind of advantageous for you to run a student. First off, there's the big growth that you get to see in your students. You really get to see them explode. I feel like when I was a state officer, Athena can probably attest to this. I was pretty, I wasn't shy. I was not a shy kid, but even as an extroverted person, I still grew so much through that transition as a state officer. And I learned things that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. So the little things like, being confident talking in situations that I wasn't prepared for, that I didn't have advance notice for. As teachers, we do that like every day of our lives. So we get used to that structure, and high school kids aren't usually being exposed to that at that point in their lives. So it's an advantage for us to get to show that to them. We're all in this for them. Very few of us get paid extra to do BPA. We do it because we love it. We do it because we think it's great for our kids. So when you get to see that growth as an advisor, that's a piece that you get to see them grow. You also get to see, they surprise you. Kids are pretty tough. They're pretty resilient. So you get to see some of that, I guess some of that, like, I don't want to keep saying growth, but when they go through and they face problems and they're like, oh yeah, let's just do this. And they fixed it before you even had a chance to help them fix it. They just did it on their own. And it's really amazing to get to see that as an advisor. So those kids, they meet a lot of people. A certain somebody on this call met her husband that way. It's really cool how you get to meet all these people. So throughout my time in BPA, I definitely still talk to some of those state officers, and I have lifelong friends that I've met in BPA that I would have otherwise never gotten a chance to gotten a chance to have in my life. So for that, I can't explain enough how incredible that is. It's also a really interesting experience to get to work with people that we're a pretty geographically big state. So it's kind of interesting to get to work with kids so in such different areas than you. Especially in Oklahoma, we have a very diverse set of students, and I think that's changing year by year, day by day. So getting those kids exposed to people outside, some of these kids have never left their hometown. And until you give them a reason to, they may never. So if we get to be that reason for them, that's another awesome benefit for them and for us. So when we talk about why we should run state advisors, we're teachers. We care about our kids more than any other part of our job, probably. So our first instinct is to go, how is it best for them? And I totally support that idea. But I also want us to think about how it's great for us as advisors. So when you have officers that you are deciding when you're communicating with your officer on whether they want to run for that state office, you get to get a lot closer with that kid. You get to see their hard work right in front of you, right in front of your eyes. Athena had many many sleepless nights because of me, probably. And that's kind of fun too sometimes. She probably didn't think that at the time, but now it's an interesting experience as an adult getting to talk to her about those things when I have a student that does something completely crazy. So again, you really get to see a new element to your students. Also, if they're a competitor or they're like Leanne was talking about, if they're a Torch Award recipient or will be recipient, if they're really doing any other student certification series, any other part of our organization that they participate in is really bolstered by that state officer experience, because they will know more on average because they've learned throughout their term of office or as they're running. They will have worked with other candidates, with other students, with other teachers. They've really branched out their network. Another really lifelong skill is learning to talk to people you've never met before. That most kids at that point in their life, again, have not gotten the chance to practice. So when we're talking about how they're growing professionally, they're growing emotionally, they're growing their content knowledge, regardless of really what course they teach, because whatever competitive event they're competing in based on your coursework, or even if it's not tied to your coursework, they're getting a stronger idea of what that looks like in the real business world, because of their term as office and getting to see all those intricate moving pieces of our organization, because there are a lot. And a state officer really can motivate that chapter as well. Their experience, kids will only believe probably about half of what I say. It's just, it is what it is at the end of the day. But when another kid says it, it really has a lot of weight behind it, because their friends are agreeing with me, and they see the impact that it's had on them. Because the kids get to see that explosion of growth too. It's not just a static moment in time that only the advisor and the student get to see. So it's really interesting how chapters can grow and become even better than they were before they had that state officer. And kids love thinking that they have the inside scoop from a state officer, even though a lot of the times we probably don't know anything that's too top secret. It resonates much better with kids when they feel like one of their own is telling them that information, and it's new, it's exciting, it's a really great experience for them. So I feel like I've rambled a lot. So one thing I want to mention that Paxton brought up earlier is this year screening is going to be virtual. And this year, applications are due December 1st. So if you have that student, you're like, I just know that they'd be a great state officer, and I just haven't gotten them to feel comfortable with that idea yet, we still have some time. That application is not a small endeavor. So be prepared to go through that with your student, but we still have time. And I think that it's just a great service that we can give to our kids, and a great growth model for them. I'm really excited to have my first state officer this year, or state officer candidate. I hope she's a state officer. And it teaches you a lot as an advisor too, because if you've never had a state officer, there's parts of the organization, we just have a lot of programs and a lot of outreach that we offer to our members. It's super easy to not know a lot about one of those programs. But as you're helping your state officer prepare for that candidate test, you're helping your state officer prepare for their speech, any questions that a member might ask them, you really get to learn a lot of these moving pieces of our organization. Because let's see, I'm getting close to having been in BPA longer than I haven't. I'm getting real close. And there's still so many parts that I, quite frankly, feel like I know nothing about. Because we're a very adaptive organization, and we try to give what's best for our kids, and that means we change a lot. So you get to learn a lot about how you can be a better advisor. You get to learn a lot about how you can be a better mentor to your students, not just your state officers and state officer candidates. And you really learn how you can bolster just your chapter as a whole. And to Sherry's point, post-secondary officers, this is a great opportunity for them too. Post-secondary officers in our tech centers have obviously gone to school because they're wanting to either start a new career, or they've lost their job and they're trying to get ready for a new one, or whatever the case might be. And it's a great way for them to grow their comfort level in a new career or a new industry that they're not familiar with. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, you're really touching every part of those competitive events as a state officer. Even if you don't know everything about that competitive event there ever was, you're learning about each event as an officer, just in my experience, at least, throughout your time as an officer. So those post-secondary candidates also benefit tremendously, probably even more than any other division, from those networking opportunities. Because post-secondary in Oklahoma, we're the biggest state for post-secondary, and Paxton, it's probably about 1,000 post-secondary students, I'm guessing.
I haven't looked at the breakdown for this year just because we're still doing membership, but typically, yes, about 1,000. This year will probably be a little bit lower.
So for comparison to other states, that's probably, if I'm guessing, triple the next state. So we really have a unique opportunity in Oklahoma for those students to network with the people that they'll be graduating with once they finish their programs at those tech centers. So it's really advantageous for them to really reach out and make those connections and build those professional relationships that can benefit them in the future. I got to serve with a post-secondary officer when I was a state officer, and it also really helps those kids because post-secondary students can provide a perspective that most high school students can't. So it's really interesting to get to see that other side because they're obviously adults, and they're going to look at the world a little bit different, which is really great for those kids because, again, I faithfully believe that a state officer's term should be looking at all those different vantage points and all those different ways of looking at problems and ideas, because that's what's going to help them most in college and their career and in any problem they really are setting out to solve in their life is how can I look at this from a different way to get the solution that benefits the most people. So is there any other questions?
It does look like Sherry has another question, and I can answer it, you can answer it. What about seniors that don't really know what their education looks like for the next year?
So seniors, when you run, you have to run in the division you're a member of at the time you apply. So for seniors, that's going to be secondary. Paxton, I might need your help on this one. I believe you have to be enrolled in a business program during your duration as an officer.
You have to be in at least a business class with kind of a business direction. We would love it if you're pursuing a business degree. If we have an advisor that has vouched for them, they can join the virtual chapter if the college that they're going to doesn't have a BPA chapter. So, if they're going to college instead of a tech center, we don't have a BPA chapter at any colleges currently. So they would join the virtual Oklahoma chapter. Kathy Orr in our office is the advisor for that. So, there's no biases with competition or anything. So she functions as the advisor for Oklahoma virtual chapter. And that's for students who are attending a school that does not have a BPA chapter. They're not on the path to getting a program or anything like that. So, and we do require that they've been in BPA before and that they have an advisor who will vouch for them on that.
And also this wouldn't be applicable necessarily to Oklahoma, but if you also have just really membership in general, that student that's really interested, but they don't know what that next step's going to look like, and they might be moving or they may not be in Oklahoma. Obviously, they're not going to be able to run for that state office, but they can still continue their BPA journey with that national virtual chapter kind of in the same format. And Mark Birch is the advisor for that. Are there any other questions about why you should run or just officer questions in general? Or I wonder what it's like. I mean, I feel like I could talk forever about this, so I don't want to ramble about nothing, but I would love to answer any questions you have.
Do you want to talk about kind of the responsibilities of a state officer and kind of the commitment that is involved there?
Absolutely. And before I do that, because this will just be really quick to Athena's question, there are 2 appointed positions, which are going to be mid-level representative and parliamentarian. So the application is going to be pretty much the same for those 2 positions. They're going to do the screening. They're going to take the candidate test. They're going to do most of those things, but they won't give a speech, I don't believe. And then for parley, it's going to be traditionally whoever scores the highest and applied to be in that position on that open parley protest. And with mid-level, I believe there's an interview process that Paxton will go through with those kiddos. And then based on those interviews, one will be appointed based on their scores. So the difference is appointed, no one's voting for. It's either application or a test. I think there's 6 elected officers. Those are going to be the ones that campaign, give speeches, reach out to the members, and they will be voted on, and they have to be elected by a majority. Okay.
Comments about Torch. I'll read through it and make sure there's no question.
Oh, and then so responsibilities as an officer. So, and this is a great time to bring up those differences in chapter offices and state offices. So a lot of chapters, mine included, have offices that don't have a state office counterpart. So that's a great opportunity for you to educate those kiddos that are interested in running about the differences between the types of offices. And gosh, I'm probably going to get one of these wrong, but the state office has president, vice president, parley, mid-level, chaplain, historian. I'm missing one. Is there still 2 vice presidents? And then another vice president. Okay. So those
order and the secretary.
Yes, I don't know how I forgot those. Yes, sorry. Those offices are each going to have their own little responsibilities, but as a whole, kids really need to know that this is not going to be something they can just kind of blow off and show up once a week, once a month or whatever it is, and just kind of wing it and hope for the best. That's not going to be a situation that creates a successful officer. So it's really, really imperative that we stress to kids when they're wanting to run the responsibility and the time commitment that comes with being a state officer, especially because it seems like 99% of the time, the kids that we get that want to run for state office are very active in everything, not just BPA. So that's when it's a really imperative time that you mentioned. BPA has to come first as a state officer. It has to be the one that you are ready to commit to if you're really wanting to be an officer. So if you're in band and you have a game on Friday night, but BPA has a SEC meeting or a deadline or whatever the case might be, those kids have to understand that needs to come first because of the significance of the office. The responsibilities that you're being entrusted with deserve more time and respect than just, I'm here, I showed up my once a month. It's much more than that. And I think we've done pretty well historically in making sure that kids understand that. And I'm going to be honest, especially for our high school advisors, we tend to have a little bit more trouble because we only see them an hour a day. So that's when it's really crucial to be emphasizing that they need to use their time with you wisely and the time that they don't have you wisely, because we can't be there to hold their hand the whole time. I mean, quite frankly, they need to be mature enough to know what their responsibilities are. And of course, we still help them and check in and make sure they understand and help them in any way we can, but also that they need to be growing their independence. I think that's another great thing you learn as a state officer. Also, Paxton can probably attest to this. I know this was true when I was a state officer, and every election I've been a part of since, probably 80 to 90% of those kids that are running are going to put president as their first choice. It's just nature of the beast. So really explaining to them that president is not the end all be all. It's not the holy grail of a state officer's term. You all get one vote. You all get to make those decisions together. You're all a part of this team that gets to try to make Oklahoma BPA the best it can be for that membership year. So I would really advocate for you to explain to your students not to get that idea of, I want to be president so bad, just getting it stuck in their head, that nothing else will make me happy. I just have to be president. Because Athena's voice is ringing in my ears. You all get one vote. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you all get that same vote. So, and honestly, a lot of the time you'll have kids that would be more successful in a different role. And that's probably the way that the committee will slate them, because they're going to pick up on that too. Traditionally, they've been either current teachers or former teachers that do these interviews. Most of the time, they're other state advisors in that panel. And they know what to look for. They know those things that they're seeing in those kids. And I've got to say, they're pretty spot on. We have some great people that would be awesome secretaries, but maybe just an okay president or an okay vice president. Or you might get in that interview and they know a lot about the secretary position and the historian position and the chaplain position, but they said that they wanted to be president and they know nothing about that position other than the fact that, well, they're the one in charge, right? So I think just really explaining to them that no office is better than another. It doesn't matter if you were elected or appointed. I mean, really, at the end of the day, you're going to do what makes sense for that kid's personality. And that's where you get to come in too, because you know that kid better than anyone else that's going to see them before they become an officer or after. You're going to know them better than anyone else, except maybe their parents, probably. So that's your time to really exert your influence and say, I think you would be really successful in the secretary role. I know you want president, but here's why I think you'd be an even better secretary than a president. Sorry, I was reading. So I think that really just stressing to kids that because honestly, when we have our kids, at 80% of the time, it's what's in it for me, for being honest. They're high school kids. What's in it for me? So starting there. And then like Leanne was talking about really explaining how that they can give back in that position too, because that's a great part of being a state officer. And then what that responsibility looks like on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis for the year. I've seen state officers that did everything they were supposed to, or most of what they were supposed to do, and then didn't go to state conference. So explaining that you probably need to be at your state conference, little things, I say little relatively, things like that, that those kids just need to absolutely understand. And then what that process looks like for them. And I would love to talk to any of you that are interested in having a national candidate too.
Yes, Sherry, I agree. Everyone brings their individual strengths to make the Oklahoma leadership the very best. And, you know, especially on the team since when Mark was here, since I've taken over, you know, every person pulls the same weight pretty much. I mean, everyone is just as busy as the next person. Every position on the team matters just as much as the next. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a mid-level representative or a president, you're going to have the same workload. So, you know, everyone's important. Everyone's making the decisions and coming to the table. Everyone has the same deadlines and important dates to remember. So, yeah. And so far, we've been really lucky. We've had some awesome teams, you know, that I have worked with so far. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. So it does mean a lot to me, you know, that you're bringing students and that you're submitting their applications for their candidacy. Does anyone have questions for Jonathan about, you know, really anything pertaining to running a state officer or the application process? I can help answer those as well. You know, what happens after you're state officer, kind of the benefits that you've learned, you know, anything like that. I know we also have several advisors on the call that have had state officers in the past. If any of you want to speak up to give advice or comment on your time as an advisor to a state officer.
Jonathan, I had a kind of just a question. What does it look like? What's the responsibilities, or maybe if you can't answer this, somebody can, the responsibilities of the advisor of a state candidate? Like, if I campaign this kid and he becomes elected, what in the world am I getting myself into?
So I'm going to start with how I view that responsibility, just that I'm placing upon myself. I faithfully believe that if I thought that student would be a successful officer and I campaigned and I put my pretty signature on that piece of paper, that it's my responsibility to do everything I can to make sure that kid's successful. So you're going to be the one, I mean, and I can't think of a school that does this any other way. You're going to be the one that takes them to those meetings if they're in person. You're going to be the one that's checking in with them. You know, what are your responsibilities for this week? Do you need my help on any of them? Where are you at? How are you doing? Where do you need the most help? Where can I help you? Do you have any questions? I really think that if, and with my state officer candidate, if she's elected, I've already told her that you have to have that hour meeting with me at least once a week for me to be able to feel confident in you being able to run. That I'm not going to run a candidate that I don't have at least an hour with a week. And honestly, I really feel like that's not enough. But I feel like that's the bare minimum. Now, I'm probably a little controlling, for lack of better words. But for, I think, just the average advisor, for most of us, we're probably going to put more expectations on ourselves than anyone else will. But I think that it's really crucial that you are a part of that process with that kid. And I don't mean that to say that advisors just kind of feed them to the wolves, metaphorically speaking, but it's really a partnership with you and that state officer, making sure that you are there to support them when they need it. And Paxton does a really incredible job of that. I will say that in advisors past, that has been challenging sometimes. That's a great luxury that we have with Paxton. So she gives those kiddos a ton of support. So honestly, sometimes it feels like you're not doing enough, but I promise those kids really, honestly, they just need to know that you're there when you need them, when they need you. But it absolutely is a partnership between you and that kiddo, and making sure that you're there to support them and answer any questions, because you're ultimately their go-to expert, you and Paxton.
Thank you, Jonathan. And there are several advisors who have had state officers longer than, I've for a while. So if they want to speak up to kind of the typical things, I know the things that I lean on local advisors for with the state officers, most commonly, you'll do a lot of proofing. I always would prefer that the students, if they send a assignment into me, that you've proofed it, you've looked at it, you've given them some feedback before it gets to my email. That way you also know what's kind of going on. So they have monthly emails, they have blog posts, they have little assignments that they're creating for us. And if I don't have to spend, a ton of time proofing their work because you've already looked at it, that does make my job a little bit easier. It helps things go a little bit quicker. But that's not always the case. And, I think especially this year, things have been overwhelming for everyone. So this has been, kind of a crazy year in trying to give those students as much support as possible. Local advisors also typically have to, depending on their school policies and how you fill out that sign to drive form in the application, will bring their students to the officer meetings. They're always allowed in our meetings. If for some reason though, I have some advisors who would prefer to be working or doing their Zoom calls or things like that. We've been providing a room for that as well. So you don't have to sit in those meetings, but you are welcome at any point in time to listen to a conversation and all of that. You don't get a vote, but you can listen to the conversations and get the information there. Or you can be working, on grading or doing a Zoom class or whatever you need to do there. Trying to think, let's see. I know Athena and Janet are some current officer advisors who are on the call. Do you all have anything to add to some of the things that you all do with your officers? Let's see, I think Athena has unmuted. Athena, did you want to share some of your thoughts?
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm teaching virtually at the same time, just like a lot of you. I would just say kudos to Jonathan Cody Gervasi. As he said, it's always great. I think that's the best thing about Oklahoma BPA is when you grow your own, when you start with those students that are 15, 16, or even younger, and you see the growth. Cody was a fantastic state president, went on, was a 2-term national officer. He's just excelled. He's now an officer on the alumni division. So I just think the leadership, the growth that you see from those students when they come in and have no idea, they're maybe not even sure they want to run because it's the unknown. And you give them that little nudge, you push them a little bit, and really see that growth potential and that leadership potential. It is so worth it. It changes your life every bit as much as it does theirs. And it's truly a blessing. I mean, the contact and the relationship that Cody and I have continued to have as he's gone into education, and now he's competing against me and my students. is great. And so I just couldn't be prouder. Our students are not just our students, they become our family, and they're very near and dear to us. So I just encourage you to get those students involved, get them to run, be supporting of them, and start early. As I'm going to talk in my workshop later today, start early. That application requires quite a bit of work. Make sure that you have the time to get ready in advance and get, especially in a virtual world that we're in right now, make sure you can get those transcripts and get those signatures. And it's more challenging now if you're definitely not in person than I think it's ever been. So I would just say I've had officers pretty much over 25 years in a row now, and wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing. I'm still going, still loving it. And Cody's a great example of why. So it's a great job. Once you do it, you'll be hooked. You'll be a lifer just like me.
Also, Paxton, I thought of one more thing if we have time.
Yeah, we have time.
And you might have to correct me if one of these numbers are wrong because I'm going off of memory. Also, one thing as an advisor that's really crucial you work with your student is the $100 deposit and then their campaign expenses, which I think the limit, no deposit anymore.
No, we don't have the deposit anymore. We just don't want to limit who can run. And so we just, I think we took that out 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. I don't remember the history of it, but basically we just didn't want any student to feel financially limited to run for state office. So
and then their campaign expenses, which is limited, is it still 300?
Yes, it hasn't changed from last year.
Is limited at 300. So either I would say that 90% of chapters, that's the activity fund for that chapter, that's supporting the candidate. And it's crucial that you and that candidate go through and read those rules and those guidelines for that. No stickers, no homemade cookies, none of that. So going through and understanding, especially this year, gosh, don't bring homemade cookies. Understanding those guidelines and those budget constraints. And again, that's a life skill. We'll have budgets in our future, or at least I sure hope we do. Otherwise, you might be in some trouble. And I put my email in the chat if you ever have any questions. Again, like Leanne said, I'm not an expert. I don't know.
Do we have where the social media questions are at?
Yes, they are. When you go to that Run for State Office page, and I'll drop it in the chat as well. When you click on the Submit Your Application, that's where all of those online questions are that you can look at, and you can open it and look at it as much as you want and get those questions. You can copy and paste it over to a Word document if you want, but that way they just fill those in right online.
Okay, thank you.
Paxton, can I just say, I mean, we've had several officers run at Meridian, and we've had several officers. And one of the things that I really feel like that even whether they win or get placed, it changes the student themselves. It's a growing experience, even them just running for office. So I think sometimes we push so much for them to place, and we all want them to be an officer, but that experience of actually I've had officers that haven't made it and have felt that it was so much worth even just running. So I really think that's kind of an important thing.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that, Terry. Okay. I know Jonathan's email is in the chat. And like I said, there are a ton of advisors on this call who have had state officers and who have ran state officers who would love to answer any questions. I'm also available to answer any questions if you have those. Does anyone have anything immediately that's on their mind about state officers or the application or anything like that before we move on? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us and your experiences. So I definitely appreciate your help on this. Okay, next up, if Natasha, if you're ready, she's going to be talking about how to create a quality SLC experience for your chapter.
Yeah, sure. I am good to go. Do you mind if I share my screen?
That is completely fine.
Okay. Before I do, I will just introduce myself a little bit. So if you don't know me, I'm Natasha Smith, and I have much like Jonathan, have been in the organization as a student and have grown up in the organization essentially. I currently teach at Union High School, and I am serving on the National Board of Trustees in my third year my third and last year on the National Board of Trustees. And I've been in the organization since 2009. So I'm going on, I think, 11 years, something like that. I'm not sure. So, but I've done everything that you could possibly do in the organization. And now I'm watching my students go through it, and it's just awesome. So let me share my screen with you guys. So I have some visuals for you. So I really pride myself on creating just that ultimate state leadership conference experience for my students and wanting them to get the best possible experience out of the whole entire 2 days or 3 days or whatever it ends up being. Because, you know, it's changed, it's bounced back and forth between 2 and 3 days a few times over the years. And that having a quality state leadership conference experience requires work, and it requires diligence, and it requires planning. And you got to know your stuff, and that's why you're here. So I do have a question for you guys, and if you would put your answer in the chat, but what does a quality SLC experience look like to you? And I know there are some very seasoned and experienced advisors on the call. So share your wisdom. What is the most important thing about a quality state leadership conference experience to you? Let's see if I can, there we go. I can see the chat. So I know I have a few things in mind that I think of as a quality state leadership conference experience. Engage students, engrossed in their events and leadership sessions. Yes, memories. I was going to say the same thing, Athena. That was going to be the first thing I said. Memories, leadership, competition, new friendships. All the things. Everyone enjoys themselves and learns from the experience. Yes. All of these are fantastic. Everybody's going to have a different perspective on that. Watching my students network with other students and have a great time. Yes, that's really fun. And especially if students haven't had the opportunity to network before, seeing them do that is fantastic. Memories, new friendships are what my students talk about the most. Give time to directly connect with students on more personal basis. It's not just about it's not only about SLC, but connecting with students to student and teacher to teacher. Yep, quality competitions, yes. Absolutely, all these are fantastic. So some of the things that I come up with are more like the logistical side of it. So what does a quality experience look like? Yes, students are as involved as they possibly can be. Memories, that's one of the things I had on there. It's well thought out and planned and organized. There's success and enjoyment and a fantastic experience no matter the competition outcome, because ultimately it's not just about the competitions, it's about the entire experience. And everybody knows the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. And students are self-sufficient at the conference. I've learned that if you have students are self-sufficient, and especially if you're an advisor who's super involved and have a lot of other responsibilities, if your students are self-sufficient, that makes it a lot easier, and they can really have that experience of being an adult, but still in the kind of the safety net of a conference with a whole bunch of other adults around, but they get to have that experience of being an adult. And I remember when I was a student and going to state conference, and my advisor would make sure I knew where I needed to be, had all the information, but there were times that I would have to be on my own because they were busy or whatever. And I felt so grown up, but it was amazing. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And that was because my advisors prepped me for it. So it starts with the advisors, and it starts with us. So how do we get to a quality SLC experience? Well, start early. That's the SLC pregame. Early. It's what Athena was saying earlier. Intentional contest matching. I think that's so important. Deadlines for you and for your students. Practice. Know the conference inside and out. It's not just about competitions. Prepare your students to be self-sufficient, and of course, the entire conference day. So I just want to touch on these different areas that I think are super important in creating a quality SLC experience. And if you have any, especially my experienced advisor friends who are on the call, if you have anything to add to any of my statements, or you have a question, just drop it in the chat. And Paxton, if you could just let me know if there's any questions or anything at any time, that'd be great. So pregame, start early. As soon as competition guidelines and SLC info are released. Usually those competition guidelines are going to come out before SLC information will. In the past couple of years, SLC or the competition guidelines have come out fairly early. Like the national guidelines have been released, and then very soon after, our state supplement or state guidelines have been released. So as soon as that's released, if you are able to logistically start at least looking at the competitions. If SLC stuff hasn't been released yet, then and only competitions have, then that's what you should look at. And it lessens your stress if you start early, because if you're starting in January, it's a little too late because January is the big like last push because everything's due at the beginning of February. So start early. Some people start in September, October, and some more like me in October, November is when I like to start. This year, it's been very slow getting started. So I'm not on my normal schedule, but we're getting there. And I find also that it's really vital and beneficial if you have like a student SLC ambassador. So this person could be your state or your chapter president, or maybe somebody who's just super gung-ho about going to state and wants to help you with the planning process. Especially if you're an advisor and you're the only advisor at the school that you're at, you definitely need some assistance, because having a quality state leadership conference experience requires a lot of work on your end. And if you can have a student that you trust and can depend upon, like your local president or whomever, then that would be super beneficial and make it even a better experience, because everything would get checked off, everything would get done, everything would be down to the detail, because you would have somebody else that you could rely on instead of it's just being you, because you're teaching too. I mean, come on. So a student SLC ambassador, they should be in the know as well about all things State Leadership Conference. And gather all the resources, find all of the resources, and have one main, like anything that you can save, anything you create, anything you download, have one main folder that you put it in. And so that way you have one place that you know where you can find it. And you can also have an email folder, like a folder on your email account that is for all your BPA emails. And one of the things that I have found that has made, especially the contest part of it, super smooth and efficient is I started this, I want to say 2 years ago, file sharing. So I create one folder for the year that is a shared contest folder. And then I have a folder for all of my students who are competing, and they have access to just their folder. So I instruct my students, especially if they're doing any pre-submission stuff, that they need to save all of their stuff. All of their current work should be in that folder. That way I can go and check it at any time that I need to, or if they have questions or they want me to look at something, I can go pull it up without having to be in the same room. And especially super important if you are in a virtual setting right now. So if you're teaching virtual or you're doing BPA at your school virtually, that's going to be super important to have that ability so that you're not emailing files or you need a USB drive or anything. It makes it super efficient. And that has, I found that just really, really works very well. And then obtain student contact information ahead of time. So if you don't already have like their cell phone numbers, make sure you obtain their contact information at that time so that you can start communicating and be able to communicate with them. Maybe if you can't get a hold of them through email or any school messaging applications, then you can get a hold of them another way. If you need to discuss anything SLC related, that's pertinent. Intentional contest matching. This is probably one of the biggest like pregame factors because this is part of pregame. This is ahead of time. This is what you're doing ahead of time, and you should be doing this early. And I know all of my fellow advisors on here who are very experienced, they do this and they do it well. But what the kind of the approach that I take to it is talking with students individually, the ones that you know who want to compete, who are interested in competing or you think should compete. I remember when I was a student, my instructor, my advisor was Terry Harp, and my electricity just flickered. So if I lose internet connection, I'm sorry. But my instructor was Terry Harp, and I remember her telling me and coming to me and saying, hey, I think you should do this contest because you would be really good at it. Because I used to be super, super, super shy and timid and introverted. And yeah, BPA changed me for sure. And she came to me specifically and told me, hey, I think you would be good at this because she saw that potential. So I'm for positive that there are several of my fellow advisors who already do that and do that well. And if you don't do that yet, you should. But talk with them individually, find their interests, find their strengths, or maybe something you've seen in there. If you have them as a student in class and you've seen their work and you've seen their potential, then you can point that out and really try to steer them into the direction of a contest that might work for them or an area of SLC that works for them. Maybe it's not competitions. But I also like to ask my students about their desired areas of improvement because competing is also about just getting better at it. So it doesn't have to always be about their interest and strengths, which is important, but maybe they want to really become a better public speaker. So they decide they're going to do a prepared speech event because they're going to try really, really, really hard because they want to become a better speaker. And this particular event would challenge them to do so. And that is amazing because it's not always just about showcasing what they can already do, but discovering and becoming what they want to be. And then whenever you have kind of an idea, or when students have an idea of like what they want to do, what you think they might be interested in, or what fits them the best, show them the entire category. Don't just show them one or two contests, show them the entire WASP categories. Even more so than that, you can even print or have the file located on your learning management system of the entire guideline so that they have access to it. And then you can highlight specific events that you think are the most appropriate for them and make sure that they read the guidelines. That's super important. Like about a few weeks ago, I have a student who she's really into business and she likes Shark Tank and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, you should probably do entrepreneurship. And I didn't say much more than that. I printed off the guidelines. I said, hey, read this. And she has been reading it and she's been going through it. And she says, I really want to do this contest. I said, okay, well, let's do it. Because she looked at the contest guidelines. I just printed them off for her and said, oh, hey, this might be a good contest for you because you like this. And don't be afraid of students doing multiple contests. So students have the ability to do 2 contests, and then they can do as many open contests as they like, open events. But don't be afraid of them doing multiple contests. If you think that they can do it, then they should do it. Last year, I was my most hectic year yet. I had 7 pre-submit events, and that was a lot. And I had, I think, 3 students who were doing 2 contests, and some of them had 2 presentation contests. So it was a lot, but they managed. I just set it up for them, and they ran with it and were successful. But organization, again, it's so important. You have to be so organized to make sure that that can happen, especially if they're doing multiple contests. Oh, and Paxton just shared link to all things in competition, which is amazing. Thank you, Paxton. So bpaok.org is going to be your go-to place. If you don't know, go there. And then if you don't find it, then ask somebody. But go to that website first. But never just assign contests to students. And I know none of you guys do. But it's super important that contests aren't just assigned to a student, because I know I have had conversations with advisors. I've had conversations with students in the past who the students will say, well, my teacher just told me that I should do this. Like, I've just talked with students at nationals and whatever, but my teacher just told me I should do this contest. So it was like they didn't have ownership in it. So if the student doesn't have ownership in what they're doing, they're not going to do their best. And their experience isn't going to be what it could be. But if the student has ownership in that contest, in the work that they're creating, in all of their participation in state leadership conference, then they're really going to try their hardest, and they're really going to do their best to make you proud. And they are going to walk away with an amazing experience, no matter the outcome. Deadlines. So set soft and hard deadlines. Those hard deadlines are going to be like the ones that state BPA releases. Don't even tell the students those deadlines. You set them soft deadlines that you make them think that this is the absolute last day. Because if you set your deadlines the same day or like a day or 2 before the state deadlines, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because it's not going to happen the way you think it is. It's just not. So make sure your soft deadlines are well ahead of the actual deadlines. And some things that you could have deadlines for is choosing contests. Hey, we need to have a contest chosen for you by this date. You need to upload your draft materials to your folder so I can take a look at it. You need to get through a certain number of practice tests if they're doing application contest. You need to finalize pre-submit by this date. So put a deadline on everything. It shouldn't be nebulous. It shouldn't be ambiguous. You should have dates. That way it's structured and organized, and you can stay on that schedule, and you're not stressing as much as you might stress if you didn't have deadlines. Because we want it to be an amazing experience, and it's going to require work, but we don't want all the stress. There's going to be some stress, but it doesn't have to be as much as it could. And then practice, practice, practice. This is a part too that I pride myself in the way that I arrange my students' practice opportunities. So most of the time, my students tend to do presentation events. I have some who do application events, but it's not as common for my students. It just ends up being that way. But for the application events, make sure that they have multiple versions, multiple years, or whatever of practice test projects. And I know that if you saw Paxton's email earlier this week, there was a little blurb about the practice test link that students who are members have access to during the weekdays. Now, Paxton, correct me, or well, clarify for me, because I don't know the answer to this. That particular practice link, is that just for objective tests?
It is, yes. So it won't give them any kind of like projects to do. It's basically, it's all the online testing that you would do during the online testing period, but these are past district tests from the past 5 years. They're online. So things like the word processing test are on there about their knowledge about word processing, but it won't tell them to create documents or anything like that.
Okay, and so we'll still need to obtain the application part of the practice test using CTU, am I correct?
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
if you're not a
So-
part of that and don't have access to it, just send me an email and we'll get you access same day.
Yes, it's very important that you have access to that BPA CTU course because you have access to all of multiple years of regional practice tests. So having students have access to multiple years of those, especially the projects, they need that practice. And you can also set up mock contest times for the students who are doing application events while they don't have a presentation event and they don't have presentation timing and all that stuff. You can still set them up a mock contest time where they have to be at a computer for that entire time. They can't do it in sections like they may be doing in their practice. Do it at that one time. You set the timer. They can only have the resources that are allowed via the guideline or according to the guidelines. And when the time's up, then time's up. And they have to practice printing and all that stuff. So they can really get a feel for what it would be like. Because I've often, in the past, I just let's give students the projects. Sorry, words are hard today. I've given students just the projects and they've practiced on their own time. But it's important that you can set them up with a mock present or contest time so they can really get a feel for what it would be like when they're actually in that computer lab doing that. And then Paxton just gave a link to the CTU for practice regional contests. So you will need to be logged in to access that. So that link is in the chat. Thank you, Paxton. And then for pre-submit events, since this is what I end up doing most of the time, this is what I focus a lot of my time to is creating presentation practice schedules. So yes, I want the students practicing on their own time and I expect them to be practicing on their own time, but I also want them doing a mock contest just as though we were going into the room and being in front of the judges at state. I want them to do that multiple times. So I create a presentation practice schedule for all of my students and I reach out to my administration and other teachers in the building, especially the teachers who have those students in class. And it may not be any business teacher. It could be their science teacher or their math teacher. If they happen to have time and are willing to give up 10 minutes of maybe their plan or whatever, if they're willing, I'm not going to make them, of course, but I always ask, say, if you're willing, would you be willing to judge and critique this student's presentation for their contest? I involve a lot of people in the school in it because it's a big deal. And when we involve the admin, we involve all these people, it creates that relationship of when the admins see those students or the teachers see those students, hey, how's that contest going? I have students who I have two students specifically I've had them since sophomore year, and this is their senior year. And they've competed every year. We took them to nationals in 2019, and they would have gone to nationals last year. They are very well known among the administration team because they have practiced so much with them over the years, and they have been so successful in their contests. And I make sure that is known. I send an email to all of my admin because they take time to help the students get there. And so whenever the students are successful, then I make sure the administration knows, hey, thank you so much. This is what the result was. And it's just really great to see that relationship. And the students come to me, it's like, Miss Robinson was just remembered me, or because we have a huge school, we have 3,500 students in our building normally. We have 3,500 students that attend the high school. So when the students are approached by an administrator, just asking them about something, they remember their name, they remember what they did, they're really impressed. And it kind of builds that awesome relationship between the students and the administration. And when I do ask these people to be judges and to critique their work, I work around their schedule. And then I tell the students, this is where you're going to go at this time, this day. And they have to set up with their entire equipment set up. They have to bring in all of their documentation that they would normally bring in. They act like it's just the real thing. And I provide those administrators and teachers with the rubrics and the guidelines. And if they aren't familiar with BPA or the contest, then I also give them a heads up and kind of a synopsis of what the event is so that they understand what they're looking for a little bit more. And of course, I make them practice with the equipment, and they have to know their equipment inside and out. And it's so important because I had a specific example that happened at Nationals in 2019. I had a student who he had won, I think, second place at state in graphic design promotion. And he gets into the preliminary round at Nationals. And I think it was preliminary. I can't remember. Anyway, one of the times he comes out and he said, so the projector wouldn't work. It was preliminary. That's right. He said the projector wouldn't work. Like it wouldn't turn on. And he said, I remained calm. He came out almost crying, but he remained calm and he just flipped his computer around and still presented, even though his projector completely wouldn't work. And he made it to the finals and was in the top. I think he was like 6th place or something. And he was so shocked that he had been able to make it further. But when we got the comments back, they were impressed with his ability to continue going on, even though he had technical difficulties. And he doesn't really you couldn't tell that he was upset. He was upset when he came out. That was when I committed to buying better projectors. Yeah, the mini projectors. Ask Athena about those. Those are fantastic. Anyway, and then know SLC details inside and out. You should know it all. If a student asks you something, you should know. And if you don't know, you can go find out. Bookmark, download, or save all of the SLC resources to one location. So if you've got any websites, any specific pages on the Oklahoma BPA website, bookmark them. And you can create a bookmark folder in your browser, or you can just put it on the bookmarks bar. Okay, this is contest information. Name it specifically for what it is. Contest information, registration, candidate information, workshop information. If there's a page on the website that you want to be able to go to immediately, bookmark it. And then if there's any files that you want to have access to offline, download them and save them to that one main folder we were talking about. That way your students have access to them as well, because you want to have them sharing folders. So if you're an Office 365 school, or you're a Google school, or any other platform that has file sharing, then maybe you use Dropbox as well. Make sure you have a shared folder so your students can have access to that, especially in this virtual time that we are in, this teaching virtual time. Then we definitely have to have that capability. So information library and conferences tabs on the website are some great resources. The information library tab has the advisor's quick links. So that's a really great resource. I just went there the other day because I was looking for something. And your emails from Paxton, all the emails, she sends amazingly detailed emails that have all the information that we need. And then Monday Madness emails, those tend to have BPA stuff in them. So save those, put them in a folder if you have Outlook or whatever email system you use, have a BPA folder. Make sure you have a BPA folder for that year too. I'm very big on file management. So I'll have like a BPA 2021 folder. And then inside of it, I'll have, okay, this is fall leadership. This is state leadership. This is NLC. I'll have folders, subfolders for everything. I'm very weird about my file management. And again, that SLC student ambassador that I mentioned at the beginning, they should know all these things too. And they should help keep you on track, because you're trying to teach and do this at the same time, and you want a quality experience. You're going to need a little bit of help. And know about all the non-competition opportunities as well. Because again, State Leadership Conference is not just about the competitions, though that is a big component. And if you're staying overnight, know the area for fun and food, because that's important. And just like I mentioned, it's not just about the competitions. It's about the workshops, running for office, just like Jonathan was talking about before, Courtesy Corps, the exhibits, all the exhibit halls and any college fairs or anything that is put together and put into place. Those are some fantastic opportunities. The workshops, we always have dynamic speakers, and there's always some really great topics, and students can benefit from those. So make sure they're aware of those workshop descriptions and that you have them select a workshop that sounds interesting to them ahead of time if it works with their competition schedule, because there are going to have holes in their schedule of where they don't have responsibilities. Running for office, if you've got somebody, just like Jonathan said, that's an amazing experience, and he did it so well. And Courtesy Corps, if you don't know what Courtesy Corps is, and Paxton, if I'm not mistaken, we still do Courtesy Corps, right?
Yes, we do. And last year we started offering some recognition for that as well. So we have our MVP award, our advisor who oversees that, Randy, I'm blanking on his last name. Randy Hesley oversees that program. He does an awesome job, and they basically get to work, as much as they can all day, or within, a couple hours or 30 minutes, however much they can spare. But we have an MVP award for the student that volunteers the most, and kind of puts in a really quality experience there. And then we also have an award that's a traveling trophy, and currently Little Axe owns that trophy. And it's for the chapter that puts in the most Courtesy Corps hours. So it is an option. It kind of lets students see the behind the scenes aspects of conference.
Now, is that still just for students who aren't competing, or students who are competing, do they have the opportunity?
Anyone who wants to do it and has time in their schedule, the only thing that we ask is that if you sign up, you show up. So because there have been years that we've had to limit that. We usually max out about 100 students. So, if you have one of those spots and you don't show up, you've taken that experience from someone else who maybe would have shown up. So.
Thank you. So Courtesy Corps, I will tell you that I'm one of the event directors for the 500 events, and I work with Athena on that. And we utilize those Courtesy Corps volunteers a lot in that particular hallway where we normally do all the 500 events. Because they're running students, they're going and grabbing students from the holding area, they're going and running errands, they're anything that we need and that we can't leave the area, where we have them there. They help check in students. It's just, they're really awesome, and they work hard. And it's not just an assignment that gives them something to be doing at state. It's actually something that they're doing, and it's an important role. And like Paxton said, as much as they can, or if they have the ability to in their schedule, then they can volunteer. And I know years ago it was limited to just those who were not competing, but that's since gone away, and Paxton made that clarification for me. So it's a great opportunity. So if you've got students have a lot of downtime and they're really good at volunteering, or they want to volunteer, then that's an option that they can be doing. So, and then the exhibits, those are always great and so much fun to go through. And then preparing students to be self-sufficient. I do a lot of front loading, or a lot of the front work for the students, and that way they can be sufficient that day, because I'm usually very busy and I'm not able to be with my students all day long. I am lucky that I have other advisors who are there and that can be with the students if they need them. But I set it up so my students don't have to have me by their side all the time. Because like I mentioned at the beginning, I like that we can set up an environment for the students that they can practice being adults, but still in the safety of a conference. So I give my students a lot of information, I give them a lot of resources, and I give them a lot of tools so that they can be self-sufficient. They should know all the details. They should know what they're doing, when they're doing it, where they're doing it, and why they're doing it, and who they're doing it, who is involved with it. So they should know all the W's. They should be in charge of their equipment. If multiple individuals or teams are using the same pieces of equipment, or maybe it's pieces of it, maybe not the entire equipment, you need to have a handoff plan. When and where that equipment gets passed off, so that the students who need it have it when they need it. And students should understand the expectations that we have of them as an entire state BPA, you as the advisor, and of course of their school and who they're representing. And I create an information packet for my students. I'm such a nerd, and I'm really detailed, maybe to a fault sometimes, but I like to have this information packet that I give to my students. So it usually includes any of all of these items: an agenda, an itinerary, conference program, maps, floor plans. That's especially important if you're not able to go early and you don't have time to look around and kind of get the lay of the land. It's important that those maps and floor plans are in there. Workshop descriptions. So if they need to make a decision on a workshop, they have that available to them. Any other non-contest related event information, your contact information, however you choose to have them contact you, hotel information if you're staying overnight, candidate info for the voting delegates, food options, the money that they need for SLC in general. So if they like food money, and if you're doing something fun, if the school's not paying for it, then the money they need for that, however that works, that's chapter by chapter. And then a suggested packing list, because especially if you're staying overnight, you want to make sure they remember everything and don't forget like their toothbrush or their tie or their pants or their dress shoes or anything. A suggested packing list would also be something that's beneficial. I don't do that for state because we don't stay overnight because we're in Tulsa, but I do that for nationals. And I had an extensive information packet that I gave my students for nationals and included a suggested packing list. So that they knew what they needed to bring, how many outfits they need to bring. Do they need to have one casual outfit or two or whatever? And so the same can apply for a state. And I wanted to provide you guys an example of an itinerary that I use every year. So I create mine in Word, and I use tables in Word. And I, of course, have the time column on the left. I have whatever the event is in the middle, and then I have the location on the right. Now, I also include with every event item, if there are specific people that need to be there, or if that event is specifically for that person, I include their names. That way, every student knows where they're supposed to be, where their buddy is supposed to be, and where their advisor is at that time. I even include the advisor assignments that they have to do. So when they're going to be doing it and where they're going to be at, in case, okay, my advisor isn't here, this is where they're at. So that's what I usually use every year. And I usually do my agendas, my itineraries for each day. So I'll have one for Tuesday and one for the Wednesday is typically when I have it. And down to we're going to meet at this time, we're going to leave at this time, we're going to get back to the school at this time, you're going to walk over to your event here at this time. I'm pretty detailed with my agendas. And then the day of the conference. Arrive early if possible. I know that's not always possible for some schools. If it's a logistic issue with buses and stuff like that, if it's not possible, that's you can't help that. But if you can, arrive early. That way you can explore the venue, especially if you haven't been there, if you've been going to fall leadership and haven't been to state in a while, or if you're just not familiar with the location, scout out the contest rooms. That's the biggest thing. If you don't have time to do anything else, scout out the contest rooms so that students know when and where they're supposed to be and they're not late because they're looking for the room. And then if you have time, make it a scavenger hunt, make it fun. They have to find, okay, where's the nearest bathroom? Where is a good place to grab coffee in the mornings? Where is this contest room? Where is the general session going to be? Where is the exhibit hall, all those things. Make it a scavenger hunt, make it fun. Make it a competition between different group people up and into teams in your chapter and make it a competition. See who can find them all first. Make it all fun because yes, it's logistical stuff, but it can be fun. Determine a prearranged meeting spot and times. That's important so that you're not constantly having to describe a location to your students of where you need to meet. So when you get there, decide on a spot. Okay, we're going to meet at this fountain every morning at this time, or we're going to meet at this fountain every afternoon at this time. Whatever it is, have a prearranged spot and times. So meeting in the mornings, meeting before we go to general session, just have a prearranged meeting spot. And showcase your day on chapter social media. So if you don't have chapter social media and you are allowed to have social media for your chapter in your school, because I know some schools have certain policies about that. If you're allowed to have that, you should have a chapter social media account because during those days they could do social media takeover. The students can take over the social media with given appropriate parameters. They can put stories, make post videos, just make it so much fun that they want to showcase their day and showcase it for the rest of their chapter and for the entire school if your school follows you on social media. That's what we do. We have a chapter social media, and we always make it a point to showcase the day on social media. And be present and enjoy that conference because most of all, that's what matters. So this is just a little bit of example of what it looks like for us, what our conference looks like for us. If you have any questions, I know I am out of time.
We definitely have time for questions. So if anyone has questions for Natasha, she's here.
Or suggestions, advice for other advisors about contest, your favorite SLC best practice, what you do, what you think you do really well. Maybe you want to share that. I'm going to go ahead and put my contact information up here.
Okay, perfect. And again, we've shared the links to where the competition guidelines are and that CTU folder that she mentioned, the practice test, it is in the chat box if you want to scroll through there and find that. To access that, you will have to be logged into CTU. And then if you still can't access it, send me an email and we'll get you access to that folder. But Natasha's sharing her contact information on the screen now. And they do have an awesome Instagram account. They're one of the best local chapters that are always posting things. So
thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. We had a big initiative last year for social media and we just really kind of, we blew up the social media. And so that's been really fun. So we really try to make that a big thing. And then I have a classroom Instagram that I started this year, Smith Studio 1125. So I hope there was something that you were able to take away. Ultimately, the bottom line is if you want a quality SLC experience, it needs to be more than just the competitions. It needs to be about the entire experience because if it's just about competitions and students don't have a whole lot of buy-in with it, then if they don't end up placing well or doing well, then they're going to be super bummed and they're not going to have any positive experience related to the conference. But if you make it about the entire event, then there's going to be some sort of positive takeaway and a learning experience, no matter the outcomes.
Agreed. Thank you, Natasha, for presenting. And again, all of this will be shared on our YouTube, and I'll also ask our presenters to share their presentations with us so that those will be available for you to view. I know there was a lot of information in that is valuable. Let's see, Mr. Hughes, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay, perfect. So next up is all about making BPA co-curricular. And Mr. Hughes from Wellston High School BPA and Middle School BPA is going to talk to you about that.
So good morning, everyone. I first of all want to tell you how amazing you are. I know this year has been challenging. As all of us presenters got on this morning, the first conversation was, how are things in the classroom? Are you surviving? I tell my kids, it's actually wrote on my board. I've always said it. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. This year is just keep swimming and don't drown. That's what the kids wrote at the bottom of it, because it's not been an easy year for anybody. It's not been easy for students, but I can tell you one thing for those of you who are in face-to-face classrooms still, count your lucky stars. I do every day. Even though I'm here with you guys today, my emails and my text messages are with my kids. Because today was kind of a test run of, I give you a lecture, and for the next couple of days, you're going to have to run with that lecture. So, and then email me, text me. We actually went through an entire training on Zoom a couple of weeks ago to really prepare for what that looks like if we had to go that way. And so for those of you that are virtual, I'm sorry. I know that I can only imagine what it's like laying your head on your pillows at night with all those worries, because I do it thinking about what it could be. You guys are living the nightmare as is. So from one advisor to another, I see you. I know your struggles. I genuinely care about you, and I hope that at some point we will get to go back to a quote unquote normal. So I just wanted to preface that it's been something that's been weighing on my heart. It's something that I consistently talk to advisors about, and whether that be BPA advisors, FCCLA advisors, FFA advisors, is that regardless whether you feel like you're making a difference, know that you are. Every teacher in every public school, in every school system, whether that be career tech, all the way down in our state, we are making a difference. And it may be in one kid's lives, it may be in 100, but at the end of the day, we are making a difference, and we're put on this earth to make that difference. So I'll jump off that soapbox, but I just wanted to let you know that I genuinely do see and care for each and every one of you. First of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Trent Hughes. I'm the the BPA and BMIC teacher, advisor, however you want to look at it. Wellston Public Schools. I teach 8th grade through 12th grade. I have the greatest job in the world. This year I have 98 students, and luckily only 2 of them are virtual. We started off with 15 and now we're down to 2. I like to think it's because of my classroom environment being one where students see the value of what we're teaching, and we run with it. So I want to change something real quick. With that, also, I am the mid-level advisor representative on the Board of Trustees. This year is my first year. I was elected over the summer, and it has definitely been an interesting and amazing experience. I've got to see things firsthand of how each and every person at national staff, the board, and the state advisors, the high school advisors all work together to do what is best for students across our nation all the time. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity to serve in that capacity. In that, we've got to see a lot of really neat things this year and had the opportunities to really try to serve advisors and students better through the board. And so with the different the advisor professional development, the student boot camp, I hope that you guys were able to utilize that and really serve kids through those, as well as I hope we were able to serve you as advisors if you attended those conferences in a capacity that really helped this year. Since we were so virtual, it allowed us to do some really neat things, I think, and really serve kids and you as well. So now I'm going to kind of jump into the content of this message. It's going to be kind of short and sweet because I struggled putting this presentation together, just being completely honest with you guys. I guess because of being a former ag teacher and it being extremely co-curricular, it was easy for me to just jump in and make those bridges. So I've kind of laid out some ideas of things where I thought you guys could utilize from the model that we're using. Also, I should establish before I get started in this that I am also the Cte Coordinator at Wellston. So I work in conjunction with the FACS teacher and the two other ag teachers on a consistent basis on how as a group we can better serve our students. There is not a single student in Wellston Public Schools 8th grade, well actually 7th grade through 12th grade, who is not served by one of the CTE departments in a given school year. They are in one of our departments. So we serve every single student 7th grade through 12th grade through our career tech coordination. So this year, going into the school year, we met and wanted to really do the best job possible of being able to serve students in a capacity where every single kid was being served by us in whatever capacity we could fulfill those needs. So one of the things that one thing that I do as an advisor is all of my students have to pay or do paying members of the local chapter. And the reason I do this is not for monetary value. It's only $10. And I always tell kids from the very beginning, if money's an issue, you come see me and I'll get that taken care of. And I do have donors throughout my community to help facilitate that if I need it. I would never tell them this, but this year on those issues, my administration and I just decided to chalk those up, that it wasn't about the money anyway. It was about making those students invested in their own learning. It was doing a better job of helping those students see the value and take value in their own education. We do a lot. I try to do a lot of things to integrate BPA in my total program, and now even more so as we're trying to make these students fully invested in the career tech sector of our school system. This was one way to help invest in that. I, from the very beginning, tell them, hey, this is the cheapest thing you're ever going to do. You're going to pay $10 and you're going to have a professional organization on your resume. Right now, as we speak, I have students in classes working on their portfolios. That's what we will be doing this week, off for Thanksgiving. The next 3 weeks, their final will be turning in their full portfolio. So they'll turn in a cover letter, resume, references, and they have to write themselves or somebody else in the class a letter of recommendation. So on their resume, some of these kids, because this generation has really struggled with wanting, or what it seems like has wanted or struggled to really jump in and get fully invested in something, this allows them to put some kind of professional organization on their resume. They have to take my class for 2 years regardless in order to graduate, as we don't have a foreign language. So for 2 years, you will have a professional organization on your resume, period. So the reason I do that is A, to help them. They don't see the value of it now, but my seniors who have graduated and are either in their freshman year or sophomore year in college have thanked me for that. It has helped them down the road. And so there is value to be had in that, making sure that activity section on a resume has something in it to show that you were more active than sitting on the bench in basketball, or even if you were the superstar in athletics, that it wasn't all about athletics. There were some other professional organizations you were seeking to be amazing at. So that's one of the biggest things I do. It was a fight when I first got started. I'll be completely honest with you. I had to explain to my administrators why I was wanting to do this. I fielded tons of phone calls, tons of emails about why I was charging when kids had to take that class. Now, most of the kids, when they walk in my room on day one, will have that $10. I'll have to have my receipt book ready to receipt that money on day one, because it's become a part of my program, and they see the value in it. I always tell them the first meeting we have, they can get their $10 back if they're in it to win it, because we do a hot dog feed and it's all you can eat. What they don't realize is hot dogs are super cheap. They'll never eat $10 worth. At least I haven't met a kid yet who can eat $10 worth of hot dogs. And I've had some do a pretty good job of trying. But what does that do on top of that? I got all of those boys at that first meeting who would have never attended. Because they had to pay the $10 for the hot dogs, they might as well come eat the hot dogs. So they're it's making that first step of really bouncing into that BPA side of it that really helps in that category. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was in this is the conjunction between where we've been working as a CTE group. We did a wellness week last week, where we did mental health, stress was one day, emotional stress was one day, and then Tuesday was Tough Talk Tuesday, where I brought in my best friend whose brother committed suicide. And we did a suicide assembly across 6th grade through 12th grade. We talked about food alternatives on Wednesday. Thursday was drunk driving and texting. Friday was just being active. And then we did a color run. We integrated all of that into our classroom. So for Monday, we were in the ag building and all of the CTE classes were down there working together. We did that Tuesday. We had the giant assembly, and then in every class, FACS and BPA were together. FFA was down in their building with both of their classes. And we just talked about where these kids, where they were at. I mean, we just sat down and broke those barriers that it's okay to talk about these tough problems. And so I say that to say this: with my school, with both of my administrators being former ag teachers, I'm lucky enough that it doesn't take much for me to go into them and say, hey, I want to do this. This is how we're integrating it. And we just want your support. And they're always there to support us. So we were able to take a FFA, BPA, FCCLA event and integrate it into our classroom completely, not even at a small scale, but an entire week-long process of being able to serve kids through our organizations in the classroom setting, because we are fully integrated when it comes to having that co-curricular activities. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was how I integrate the classroom aspect to connect with the types of contest students can compete in. I'm not saying I'm the greatest at it. First of all, if I was going to say my biggest downfall as an advisor, and an area that I consistently put on my "you've got to do a better job of" list, is really doing a better job of helping students see the value of all the contest. I spend so much time and so much of my brain power and mental worry going, okay, here's the curriculum, here's the objectives. Okay, how do I turn that into a real world scenario to where the kids see value of it and they have something to take away from it? And so what I try to do is make sure that every one of those things that we're doing, they're going to see value outside. So like end of semester one, just like we talked about a minute ago, is my portfolio assignment. Not bragging, but kind of bragging a little. Every student who's ever created that in my class has had no problem getting a job. We critique those to a fault. We usually spend 6 weeks on that category alone, because that is the biggest value added to my program that I can offer kids, in my opinion. I have had 5 students so far up until this point apply for jobs as an entry level, and because of their amount of time, effort that has been spent on my part as well as theirs and their peers going over those portfolios, they ended up making above minimum wage. There is a value to be added there from our perspective to help these students be successful in a careers down the road. And so within those moments where we're doing these lessons and we're doing this project-based lesson, I always have a little notebook that I put off to the side of my thing, and I write down those kids' names of where they're excelling in an area, and where I see that things just come easy. Like last year, I have on here one of my students. She had always kind of talked about wanting to do medical field stuff, and I found out there was so many things that were lining up. So I went through and I literally pulled out the guidelines and started flipping through, trying to find a specific area that I thought she could be successful in. And she ended up doing the medical contest. And now this girl literally graduated last week, top of her class, from dental assistant school, and has 5 offers on the table from 5 different dentist offices. We do make a difference, and those contests make a difference. That girl would not have been a third of prepared when it comes to the documentation section of that had it not been for us working so hard studying for those contests. And so she's just one of many stories I can tell you of where we found that linkage of where a kid was successful. And I literally pulled out the book and we went one by one through them of the areas of those contests that fit those strengths of those kids. Now, here's where I am a little bit of a jerk, and my kids would tell you that, is that you can pick out one area that you are extremely good at, but I make them pick out one of an area that they struggle with, and they learn that area. Now, they may never make stage. They may never even make it to state in that area, but they study it. And I promise you this, it makes them a better human by filling that weakness than they ever would have thought. Just because I think sometimes, and I'm the world's worst because I'm terrible at English and I'm terrible at spelling. And I've strived my whole life to become better at those areas. I think sometimes we fall short on those areas of helping students. How do we better serve them in that weakness without it feeling like we're coming down on them? And so that's just one thing that I've added last year, and I'm going to add again this year, is when we start doing this competition lineup, like you have to find an area that you don't think you'd be very good at, and we're going to see if we can chase those and become better at it. So there's that one. And then lastly, one thing that I thought of was if you guys happen to have listened to my I guess quote unquote guest lecture at summer conference, I gave a lecture about project and work-based learning and how I integrate that in my classroom. I integrate this year. I have really truly integrated that with my BPA program. In my classes, we were lucky enough to receive the grant for the oh my goodness, the lottery grant, and we bought a direct-to-garment printer and the entire setup. We used the $15,000 from the grant, and my administration allowed me to use some other grant money and stuff like that from the school system, and the total package ended up costing us about $22,000. But exactly what I pitched in that grant, exactly what I pitched to my administration is occurring. One of my advanced classes, actually two of my advanced classes, do nothing but design shirts, and then we print them. Now, obviously, that helps us a little from a monetary standpoint, but that has nothing to do with why I decided to do it. They make invoices. They do the communications with the client. They are integrating all of those things into their classroom time, as well as now we've almost got to the point to where there's 3 or 4 students who are really good at designing things, that now when a client puts it out, it's no longer Johnny's deal or Susie's deal to design those. All 3 of them design it. Then they sit down as a committee. They hash out those designs. Whoever is the main design goes back and adds all the things. So we're getting to do that through this. Now, we have got to work with some really cool other BPA chapters, FFA chapters, FCCLA chapters in designing those things for them. It's gave my students the opportunity. Now, obviously, I would have really liked this to not happen on a COVID year, where we could have had those officer teams come in and we would have got to integrate it more, because that's what I really wanted, was to really integrate my students working with other students kind of deal, working with other clients. But the biggest thing is for us is we're getting to utilize that work-based and project-based learning as a total capacity. So I don't know if that's kind of all that I've got. I just want to leave with one last thing. Just my biggest thing that I can tell you, especially when it comes to the competitive events, one thing with the competitive events is it took me, well, let me rephrase that. It took Paxton explaining to me that it wasn't about having to be perfect at it when you get started when it comes to competitive events. It's jump in, tell your kid, and I mean, that's where I can agree with Natasha completely on the SLC. And that's what I was trying to explain kind of in a short blurb in the text, was for us, going to SLC has little to do with SLC from a competitive standpoint. We go to have a great time. The kids get to pick a awesome dinner that they go to that's comped by the school. Because they do that for, and the way I did that was they did that for the athletics. When they went to state, they would comp a state dinner for them, for the athletic team. So I got the school to do the same thing for us. So the last 2 years, we've went to that Italian restaurant that's right over there by there. If you haven't found it, I'll shoot me an email. I'll find you the name of it. It's incredible. It's like a little basement Italian restaurant. The kids absolutely love it. It's like something that they've already started asking about this year. Hey, are we going to, when we go to state, when we qualify for state, like, are we going to go there? I don't care where we go. I tell them all the time, Tub doesn't miss a meal. So you just tell me when to show up for dinner and I'm going to be there. So for us, it's all about that bonding time. Last year I took 2 8th graders to state, because I was lucky enough to be pushed in a direction to take some kids and compete some 8th graders at the mid-level contest. And we were lucky enough to be pretty successful. 2 of those 2 girls who competed at state are now on my officer team. They would have never stayed in my class ever. So this bridge between the curriculum and BPA when it comes to competitive events is the most amazing things to build the leadership side of it. And so I said that was the last thing, but when I was putting that, I had to write down leadership. We can talk about BPA from a competitive standpoint all day long. All of us can, and the values. But I hope that each and every one of you can see the amount or what we're doing when it comes to leadership. In my opinion, the leadership aspect of any CTE, oh my goodness. Somebody help me here. CTE organization is that we have the ability to, it's all foundationed in leadership. And so for me, even if I wanted, I was having this conversation with an ag teacher the other day, who's one of my friends, and we were talking about, man, it would be so much easier to go work somewhere 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, make more money. But both of us agreed, it's funny, we could always say that, and we're like, oh, we're going to stay till this student's done, and then maybe I'll look at getting out. I've done that for I've thought about that for 5 years. And I was actually talking to my fiance the other night, and I was like, I might as well just quit saying that, because one student leads to another student you're making a difference in their life, to another student you're making a difference to their life. And so for me, it's kind of got to that point to where I finally realized the money doesn't matter. Making that student the best version of themselves is why I chose to do this and why I will remain to do this. And the leadership aspect of this program allows us that opportunity to be that for a kid. Like I said, with those 2 girls, I genuinely don't think they would have ever been an active member had I not just said, hey, you're going to go take this test. We're going to go to this thing. I don't care if you are dead last in the category. Let's just go do this. Let's have fun. We're going to go to Eskimo Joe's. We're going to eat afterwards, and we're just going to have fun with it. And that's it. There's no expectations whatsoever. Those 2 girls are my 2 biggest advocates for my mid-level right now, because they're freshmen. So all the middle school think they're amazing because they're, out of middle school and in high school. And for them to come back and talk to them is amazing. But above that, they have value to add to those mid-level students. So that was just one thing I wanted to make sure and touch base on, in that was that sometimes we put the preference on winning when in all actuality, the winning is them being active. So does anybody have any questions? I really hate just lecture style. It's not my thing. Like, I'm a walk around the room, act like a 5-year-old kind of classroom style. So it's easier for me to answer questions than it is to really lecture. You can ask my kids. They'll tell you the same thing. And you don't have to put it in the chat. You can just straight up just jump in. Paxton, I probably put him to sleep. You may have to wake him up.
No, I think you're good. So while people may be collecting their questions or typing them in the chat, I am going to pop the torch pins link in the chat for those of you who are wondering about that. And yes, I definitely agree with Jackie. Thank you to all of our BPA presenters today. It's so much better to hear from our local advisors than to just hear me talking about program after program after program. So thank you all for putting in the time to present today. Does anyone have any questions for Trent about, he's really great at project-based learning. He's speaking about co-curricular type things. So what would you like to know from Trent? Trent, do you want to share your email in the chat in case they do have some questions?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hope I spelled all that right because I hit enter. Yeah, I hit enter before I read it.
So Sherry's asking if your summer conference talk is available. Do you know offhand, Trent? If not, Jackie may know.
I don't know when those were supposed to expire.
Okay.
I tried to go back and watch myself do it, but watching yourself is terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Jackie,
No, but I tend to recommend.
Do you know if the summer conference main presenters sessions are still available to view?
Trent, did you do that on the first day?
I think so. I don't know that.
Yeah. I'm not sure that those are still available because it was a certain time frame. We can check. I can check with the ACTE, but I think that time has expired for those. But I'll double check on that.
If those were recorded, could we get the recording of it to put on like the YouTube channel?
Yeah, that would be great if we could do that. I'll check into that. I'll see if we can do that.
I mean, I don't want my face on the YouTube channel, but I have had some other people ask me if there was ways to access it, and I said I don't know.
Sure, let me see. I'll do some checking on that, see if we can find out.
Okay, great. And we do have all of our second day summer conference things on the YouTube channel. So once Jackie finds out if we can get day one stuff, then we can add that. Oh, that's awesome. I love it when some of the tech centers or different schools get former students. So very good. Okay, so if you do have some questions, Trent's email is in the chat. Feel free to email him. You can also email me and I can get it to Trent, or I can answer. Thank you again to everyone who presented today. So what we're going to do shortly in about 5 minutes is break for lunch. So I wanted to speak a little bit about what to expect this afternoon. We will have a very in-depth presentation, lots of information about all things competition and WASSP after lunch at 12:30 when we meet back. So please log in. I'll have the meeting open so you can log back in, or you can stay logged in and muted, however you want to do that. That will start at 12:30. Athena, Frank, and Roberta Sams will be presenting that, and they're members of our SEAC team with nationals, so they're very well versed in all things competition. After that, we will have breakout rooms for most of the competition areas. There are a few that will stay with me in the main room, but we have some wonderful volunteers who work with those events from year to year who are going to be available in those breakout rooms to answer your questions. So, and you can, we're going to try the hop around breakout room procedure. So you'll get to kind of pick which breakout room you want to go to. If you have questions about the 500 level events, there will be someone in that room that you can talk to. If you have questions about the 200 level events, you'll be able to talk to that person and get your questions answered. And then I'll be in the main room to answer general questions and then answer questions for the areas we don't have presenters for. If you have a question today, make sure you ask it. That's what we're all here for. We want to make sure that you leave confident going into State Leadership Conference season and preparing for that. Perfect. Vina, Trent would be an awesome resource for your mid-level if you do need some assistance with that. Okay, well, if there are no more questions before we break for lunch, then I would say that we can go ahead and break. So I will keep this on. If you want to stay on, that we don't have to find the link again, that's fine. If you do get off, just make sure you look in that email to find the link and log back in before 12:30. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Paxton, for everything.